What if your neighbors, people you pass by every day, were hiding a dark secret, one so horrifying it could change the way you see the world forever? What if, behind their warm smiles and polite gestures, they were living a nightmare, one that could turn your deepest fears into reality? Picture a quiet neighborhood in Atlanta. Children play on the sidewalks, families gather for backyard barbecues, and everyone goes about their routines without a second thought. But just a few feet away from you, in one unassuming apartment, a couple was hiding a twisted secret. It wasn't a secret about an affair or a petty crime. It wasn't about a financial scandal or a dark past they were trying to bury. No, this was a secret that could only exist in the darkest corners of the human soul. A secret about murder, cannibalism, and the destruction of innocent lives. This isn't fiction. This is the chilling true story of Alex and Scarlett Blackwood, a couple whose bond was not forged by love, but by something far darker. Their lives were a facade, a perfect, ordinary image that hid a terrifying truth behind closed doors. And when their secret was exposed, it shook the city of Atlanta to its core. In this video, we will dive deep into the life and crimes of the Blackwoods, unraveling the horror they unleashed, the twisted psychology behind their actions, and the investigation that ultimately brought them to justice. But be warned, what you're about to hear may forever change how you view the people around you. Before we dive deeper into this story today, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this journey, and give this video a thumbs up. Your support energized us for sharing this creeping story, and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. Atlanta, a bustling metropolis known for its history, culture, and vibrant community. A city where progress meets tradition, where new dreams collide with old memories. From its booming economy to its deep southern roots, Atlanta is a city full of life, but every city has its secrets. And Atlanta's were far darker than anyone could have imagined. Beneath the glistening skyline and the festive energy of its downtown streets, there was a darker side to Atlanta. It wasn't the kind of darkness that showed up in news reports or was talked about over coffee in the morning. No, it was the kind of darkness that lurked in the quiet places, the abandoned neighborhoods, the forgotten alleyways, and the apartments that lined the outskirts of the city. These were the places where the truth about the Blackwoods lived, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. In 2017, an innocuous discovery in one such neighborhood would reveal a series of horrifying crimes that no one in the city could have ever predicted. What appeared to be an isolated case of missing persons quickly escalated into a nightmare that would unravel over the next few months, exposing the Blackwoods' gruesome secret. At first glance, Alex and Scarlett Blackwood were a perfect fit for suburban life. They lived in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta. Nothing too flashy, nothing to raise suspicion. They seemed like anyone else, a young couple trying to build a life. They had jobs, they had friends, they blended in with the crowd. But beneath this outward appearance lay something far darker. Alex's early years. Alex Blackwood's childhood wasn't the story of a man born to greatness. His story was one of abandonment, neglect, and deep emotional scars. Born to parents who were unable or unwilling to care for him, Alex was placed in foster care at a young age. His life, from the very beginning, was filled with instability. He was bounced from one foster home to the next, never finding a place to call his own. For years, Alex longed for the love and stability that every child deserves, but it never came. He never learned how to trust people, never felt safe in the world. He grew up closed off, emotionally isolated, with a deep sense of abandonment and anger that festered inside him. When he was finally adopted, it seemed like a new chapter, but the damage was done. The scars from his early years ran too deep, and no amount of love from his adoptive parents could heal them. Scarlett's tragedy. Scarlett Blackwood, on the other hand, had a seemingly more stable life. She was a nurse, a respected professional in Atlanta with a promising career ahead of her. She was known for her compassion, her drive, and her ambition. But her world came crashing down when her first husband died unexpectedly. The grief was overwhelming. It consumed her, and instead of finding ways to cope with it, Scarlett spiraled into addiction. Alcohol and drugs became her refuge from the pain, but they only deepened her sorrow. She lost her job, her friends, and, eventually, her sense of self. What had once been a bright future now seemed like an endless cycle of despair. She became a shadow of the person she once was. The meeting of Alex and Scarlett. It was during this time of personal devastation that Scarlett met Alex. The two connected on a deep level, not because of shared joy or happiness, but because of shared pain. They saw in each other a reflection of their own brokenness. Scarlett, searching for an escape from her grief, found a strange comfort in Alex, whose past had hardened him to the world. For Alex, Scarlett was someone who could understand his emotional isolation. Together, they forged a bond that wasn't based on love, but on a shared need to control the chaos within them. They began to rely on each other, their bond growing stronger over time. But what began as a connection based on mutual trauma would soon transform into something much darker. Leah Johnson was 32 years old, a woman who, like so many others, found herself looking for love in a world that often felt cold and impersonal. After a long, painful breakup, Leah decided to turn to online dating, hoping to find companionship, someone who could fill the emptiness she felt inside. Leah's journey was like so many others in the digital age. She made profiles, exchanged messages, and met new people. But unbeknownst to her, Alex and Scarlett were also looking for someone. But they weren't looking for love. They were looking for a victim, someone they could manipulate, someone vulnerable, someone desperate for connection. Leah and Alex connected on a dating app. At first, it seemed innocent enough. Alex was warm, friendly, and easy to talk to. They chatted about their lives, their struggles, and eventually, Alex invited Leah to meet in person. He assured her it would be a casual dinner at his apartment. Nothing too formal, just two people connecting over a shared meal. Leah, wanting to take a step forward after months of loneliness, agreed. She had no idea that walking into their apartment that night would be the last decision she ever made. Leah's evening with Alex and Scarlett started off like any other dinner with new people. They talked, laughed, and bonded over small talk. There was nothing to suggest anything out of the ordinary. But as the night wore on, Leah began to feel a strange unease. Scarlett, once welcoming, started to withdraw into herself. Alex, who had seemed so warm earlier, began acting erratically. His attention shifted, and Leah couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She tried to ignore it, dismissing it as nervousness, but she was wrong. As the night progressed, Alex offered Leah a drink, just a simple cocktail, he said. But what Leah didn't know was that the drink was laced with a powerful sedative. Alex watched carefully as she drank, making sure the drug took effect. Slowly, the world around Leah began to blur, and her body grew heavy. She tried to stand, tried to fight against the sedative, but it was too late. The next thing Leah knew, the world went black. While you are enjoying this interesting story, please subscribe to the channel. When Leah lost consciousness, the Blackwoods' true nature emerged. They didn't panic. They didn't rush. Instead, they worked with disturbing precision. The couple had done this before, and it showed in the cold, methodical way they moved. They restrained Leah, ensuring she couldn't fight back. What followed was nothing short of horrific. Alex and Scarlett began dismembering Leah's body with a chilling calmness. The sounds of knives slicing through flesh echoed in the apartment as the Blackwoods reduced her to pieces. But this wasn't just about killing her. It was about control, about asserting their dominance over her life, about consuming what they could never have in their own twisted minds. Her body was carefully cut apart. Limbs, torso, and head, each part placed with clinical precision. They didn't just want to kill her. They wanted to turn her into something they could consume, literally and figuratively. They preserved her body parts, storing them in their fridge like food, each piece of flesh a trophy in their sick game. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Leah's death could have easily been written off as just another missing person case, if not for a fateful discovery. Mark Davis, a construction worker, found an abandoned phone near the Blackwoods apartment. It was a moment of fate that would forever alter the course of the investigation. Inside the phone, Mark found something he couldn't ignore. Photos, disturbing, graphic images of dismembered bodies. The Blackwoods' twisted trophies were on full display, and Mark knew that what he had found was something much more sinister than anyone had realized. Detective Olivia Turner was assigned the case, and when she saw the photos, she knew the investigation had taken a dark turn. What began as a routine inquiry into missing persons quickly became something much larger. The pictures were not only of Leah, they were of others, victims whose bodies had been mutilated in similar ways. Olivia and her team worked tirelessly to track down the origins of the images, piecing together the Blackwoods' twisted trail. They discovered that the couple had been operating for years, luring vulnerable people into their home, then killing and dismembering them in the most grotesque way imaginable. The police, armed with the evidence they needed, moved quickly to arrest Alex and Scarlett. When they stormed the Blackwoods apartment, they found jars filled with preserved human flesh, proof of their cannibalistic obsession. In the kitchen, a cookbook was found. But this was no ordinary cookbook. It was a recipe guide on how to cook human body parts. Both Alex and Scarlett were arrested and brought in for questioning. Scarlett's confession was chilling. She spoke without remorse, describing their crimes as if recounting a mundane task. She and Alex had built a life based on control, dominance, and violence. Their bond wasn't about love. It was about power, about taking what they wanted no matter the cost. Alex, initially denying everything, eventually confessed. He, too, was devoid of emotion. It was as if the murders were a natural extension of their twisted needs, a hunger they could never satisfy. The Blackwoods crimes were not born from sudden insanity. They were the result of years of trauma, neglect, and emotional pain. Alex's early life shaped him into a person unable to form connections, unable to trust. Scarlett's grief and addiction had warped her into someone who needed control to fill the emptiness inside her. Together, they fed off each other's pain, feeding a hunger that would only grow. Murder, for them, was an expression of power, a way to take back what life had denied them. Cannibalism wasn't about hunger. It was about reducing their victims to nothing, about asserting ultimate control over someone else's life. While you are enjoying this interesting story, please subscribe to the channel. The capture of Alex and Scarlett Blackwood brought an end to their reign of terror, but the damage had already been done. The city of Atlanta, which had once been unaware of the horrors lurking beneath the surface, was now forever scarred by the twisted legacy the Blackwoods had left behind. Their trial was a spectacle, but it was also a chilling reminder of how far some people can go when consumed by darkness. Alex was sentenced to life in prison, but his story ended sooner than anyone expected. Less than a year after being incarcerated, he died from untreated diabetes. A tragic irony, considering his own lack of care for those he tormented. Some speculated that prison conditions had contributed to his death, while others questioned whether foul play was involved. But whatever the cause, his death did little to ease the pain left by his crimes. As for Scarlett, her fate was different. After confessing to her role in the murders and cannibalism, she was sentenced to a much lighter term, only 10 years in prison. Many were left wondering if such a sentence was enough, considering the grotesque nature of her crimes. The victims' families were left with a deep sense of injustice. How could someone who participated in such horrors receive so little time for the damage she had caused? The Blackwoods' capture brought some closure to the case, but the true scope of their crimes was still difficult for many to comprehend. How many victims had they really claimed? How many lives have been destroyed by their twisted obsession? In the aftermath of the Blackwoods' arrest, the city of Atlanta found itself grappling with the question, how could this have happened? How could such a monstrous act exist in a place where so many felt safe? The investigation revealed that the Blackwoods had been careful, methodical, and disturbingly patient. They hid in plain sight for years, their victims unsuspecting and trusting, until it was far too late. But the true horror of their story wasn't just the murders or the dismemberments. It was the fact that they were ordinary people. Alex and Scarlett didn't fit the typical image of serial killers. They weren't faceless monsters lurking in the shadows. They were people who lived in the same neighborhoods, walked the same streets, and appeared just like anyone else. It was this ability to blend in, to deceive, that made them so terrifying. In the wake of their capture, the people of Atlanta were forced to confront a harsh reality. How well do we really know the people around us? Could there be others out there, hiding their own secrets, waiting for the right moment to strike? Detective Olivia Turner, who had led the investigation into the Blackwoods, admitted that even she had been blindsided by their ability to live undetected for so long. She often wondered how many other similar stories might be hiding behind closed doors, waiting to be uncovered. The truth was, the Blackwood story wasn't just about murder. It was about how far people can go when they feel disconnected from the world around them. It was a reminder that, while some monsters wear masks, others walk among us, unnoticed. To understand the Blackwoods crimes, we must look deeper into the psychology that drove them to such horrific acts. Alex's early years, marked by neglect and rejection, created an emotional void that festered for decades. His inability to trust others, his need for control, and his sense of deep anger towards the world around him all contributed to his descent into darkness. Murder wasn't just an act for Alex. It was a way to exert control over a world that had never offered him any sense of stability or compassion. Scarlett's story was equally tragic. Her grief over the death of her first husband consumed her. The pain, the loneliness, and the isolation drove her to addiction. When she met Alex, it was like two broken souls finding solace in each other's misery. But instead of healing, their connection only deepened their shared sense of trauma and pain. They didn't help each other. They enabled each other, feeding off their vulnerabilities until it evolved into something monstrous. Psychologists have long debated the nature of evil. Some believe it's an inherent trait, a darkness that lies dormant within all of us. Others argue that it's a product of circumstances, shaped by trauma, neglect, and life's injustices. In the case of the Blackwoods, it was a combination of both. Their past shaped them, twisted them into something unrecognizable, and ultimately led them to commit unimaginable acts. But the most terrifying part was their ability to blend in. They looked like anyone else. They weren't outcasts. They were just ordinary people. And that's what made them so dangerous. While you are enjoying this interesting story, please subscribe to the channel. The case of Alex and Scarlett Blackwood leaves us with uncomfortable questions. How much can we truly know about the people around us? Could we have missed signs of their darkness? Signs that others were too afraid or too unaware to see? How many more stories like theirs are out there, hidden beneath the surface of everyday life? In the wake of the Blackwoods' arrest, there was a collective reckoning. People became more aware of the dark potential lurking beneath the surface of their communities. They started questioning what they knew about their neighbors, their co-workers, and even their loved ones. How much of our lives are truly visible to others? How much darkness could be concealed behind the walls of seemingly normal homes? The Blackwoods were terrifying not just because of what they did, but because they were able to live among us without anyone noticing. Their story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most horrifying monsters aren't the ones hiding in the shadows. They're the ones we never suspect. Thank you for joining us as we explored the terrifying case of the Blackwood couple. Their story leaves us with unsettling questions and haunting reflections. What drives people to such extremes? How do we protect ourselves from those who walk among us in plain sight, hiding their darkest secrets? I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think the Blackwoods' crimes could have been stopped earlier? What signs should we have looked for? And how do we keep our communities safe from the unseen threats that might be lurking in our neighborhoods? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story as chilling as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true crime stories that dive deep into the darkest corners of human nature. The truth, as we've seen, is often stranger and far more terrifying than fiction. As the story of Alex and Scarlett Blackwood comes to a close, we are left to ponder the most unsettling question of all. How much can we truly know about the people we encounter in our lives? And how far can someone's darkness go before it's finally noticed? The Blackwood story serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we least expect.